I was watching the snow fall in thick sheets outside my office window when my phone started ringing with a number I recognized immediately. And my stomach dropped, because nothing good ever came from Brenda Morrison calling me during business hours. I run a snow removal and landscaping business in Rochester, Minnesota, called Thornton Equipment Services. My name is Trevor Everett, and for the last 8 years, I have built this company from the ground up with nothing but a used plow truck and determination. Now I have a fleet of 12 vehicles, 20 employees during peak season, and contracts all over Olmsted County. One of my biggest contracts has been with Meadowbrook Estates, an upscale homeowners association development on the west side of town, where people pay premium prices to live in cookie-cutter houses and follow rules about what color they can paint their mailboxes. I let the phone ring twice more before answering. Trevor Everett speaking. Mr. Everett, this is Brenda Morrison from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA board. Her voice had that particular quality of someone who believed they were doing you a favor by talking to you. I need to discuss an urgent matter with you regarding snow removal services. What can I help you with, Brenda? I kept my tone professional even though I had dealt with her micromanaging tendencies for 3 winters now. She was the kind of HOA president who would measure your grass with a ruler and send violation notices if it was a 1/4 inch too long. Well, I am calling because we have a situation. My driveway has not been plowed yet, and it has been snowing for 4 hours now. I cannot get my car out, and I have an appointment in 45 minutes. I pulled up the service log on my computer screen. According to our records, we plowed your street and all the main roads in Meadowbrook Estates at 6 this morning. We do not include individual driveways in the HOA contract. That is specifically outlined in the agreement. The HOA contract covers community roads, the clubhouse parking lot, and sidewalks along the main thoroughfares. I am aware of what the contract says, Brenda said, and I could hear the edge in her voice getting sharper. But I am the HOA president, and I need my driveway cleared. I assumed you would understand that certain members of the community require additional consideration. I took a breath and kept my voice level. If you would like to add individual driveway service, we offer that as a separate service. It is $200 for the season or $50 per visit. I can have someone out there within 2 hours if you want to set that up. The silence on the other end lasted just long enough to be uncomfortable. You want me to pay extra? I think you are forgetting that the HOA contract is worth $30,000 to your company. That is a substantial amount of money. It is, and I appreciate the business. But the contract has specific terms about what we cover. I cannot just add free services because you are the president. That would not be fair to other residents who pay for driveway service. Fair. Brenda's voice went up half an octave. Let me explain something to you, Mr. Everett. I have worked very hard to build this community into something special. When I need something, I expect the people we do business with to be accommodating. Now, you have trucks and plows already in the neighborhood. How much effort would it really take to just swing by and clear my driveway? 5 minutes of your time. I had been in business long enough to recognize where this conversation was heading, and I did not like it one bit. It is not about the time, Brenda. It is about the principle. If I plow your driveway for free, then I would need to do the same for every HOA board member, and then everyone else would want the same treatment. I have to draw a line somewhere. So you are refusing to help me. It was not a question. It was an accusation. I am offering to help you at the standard rate. That is not refusing. That is running a business. I see. Brenda's tone had gone cold. Well, perhaps I need to bring this up at the next HOA board meeting. We will be reviewing all vendor contracts in 2 weeks, and I think the board should know that Thornton Equipment Services is not willing to go above and beyond for this community. The implication hung in the air like a threat. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my voice steady. That is certainly your right, Brenda. If the board wants to put the contract out for bid, I understand, but I am not providing free services just to keep the contract. That is not how I do business. We will see about that. She hung up without saying goodbye. I set my phone down and stared at it for a long moment. My office manager, Rita, looked up from her desk in the corner. She was a 60-year-old woman who had worked in logistics for 30 years before joining my company, and she did not miss much. That sounded pleasant, she said. Brenda wants free driveway plowing because she is the HOA president. Rita snorted. Of course she does. Let me guess, she threatened the contract. Not directly, but close enough. You going to cave? I shook my head. No, we have done good work for that HOA for 3 years. Our contract is competitive, and we have never missed a service call. If they want to switch vendors over something like this, that is their choice. But I am not giving away free work just to appease someone who thinks their title means they get special treatment. Rita nodded approvingly. Good. You start doing that and it never stops. People like Brenda always want more. She was right, but I still felt uneasy. The Meadowbrook Estates contract was significant. It represented about 15% of our winter revenue. Losing it would hurt, but not as much as setting a precedent that I could be bullied into giving away services. The snow kept falling through the afternoon. My crews worked their routes, keeping parking lots clear and roads passable. We had contracts with 3 other HOAs, 2 shopping centers, an office park, and about 40 individual residential clients who paid for driveway service. Everyone got the same level of professionalism and efficiency. That was how I built my reputation. At 4:30, my phone rang again. Different number this time. Mr. Everett, this is Patricia Coleman. I am on the HOA board at Meadowbrook Estates. Her voice sounded apologetic, which was different from Brenda's entitled tone. Brenda asked me to call you to discuss the snow removal situation. What can I do for you, Patricia? Well, Brenda has been calling all the board members this afternoon. She is very upset about her driveway situation. She has called an emergency board meeting for tonight at 7, and she wants to discuss terminating your contract. I felt a flash of anger but kept it contained. Over one driveway that is not included in our contract terms. I know it seems extreme. I have been reviewing the contract myself, and you are absolutely right that individual driveways are not included. But Brenda is very influential on the board, and when she gets fixated on something, she usually gets her way. I wanted to give you a heads up because I think she is serious about this. I appreciate the call, Patricia. Can I attend this meeting to address the board? It is a closed session, but I can suggest that we invite you. Let me talk to the other board members. I will call you back within the hour. She did call back, 50 minutes later, to tell me I could attend the meeting to present my case. I spent the next hour pulling together documentation. Our original contract with all the terms highlighted, service logs showing we had exceeded our obligations multiple times by clearing extra areas during heavy storms, and pricing comparisons with other snow removal companies in the area. I also printed out invoices showing that we had never been late on a single service call in 3 years. The Meadowbrook Estates clubhouse was a pretentious building designed to look like a southern plantation house, complete with white columns and a circular driveway. The parking lot was perfectly clear because my crew had been there at noon to push back the snow. I parked my truck and walked inside, carrying my folder of documents. The meeting room was set up with a long table at the front where 5 board members sat. Brenda Morrison was in the center seat, wearing a burgundy blazer that probably cost more than my truck payment. She was in her late 40s with blonde highlights and the kind of smile that did not reach her eyes. Patricia Coleman sat 2 seats down, looking uncomfortable. The other 3 board members I recognized from previous interactions, but did not know well. About 15 residents sat in chairs facing the board. I took a seat in the back row. Brenda called the meeting to order and went through some standard business about landscaping plans for spring and a proposal to install new street signs. Then she got to what she really wanted to discuss. Item 7 on the agenda is a review of our snow removal contractor. As you all know, we have used Thornton Equipment Services for the past 3 years. However, I have recently become aware of some concerns about their level of service and commitment to our community. I felt my jaw clench. She was spinning this to make it sound like there was an actual service problem. This morning, during a significant snowfall, I attempted to contact Mr. Everett about clearing my driveway so I could get to an important appointment. Not only did he refuse to provide this basic service, but he also demanded payment and was quite rude about it. A few residents murmured. I stayed silent, waiting for my turn to speak. This raises serious questions about whether Thornton Equipment Services views us as a valued client or just another number. When I expressed my disappointment, Mr. Everett made it clear that he was not interested in going above and beyond for this community. Therefore, I am proposing that we terminate the contract immediately and seek bids from other companies who will appreciate our business. Patricia raised her hand. Brenda, I think we should hear from Mr. Everett before making any decisions. He is here tonight and has asked to address these concerns. Brenda looked like she had bitten into something sour. Fine. Mr. Everett, would you like to speak? I stood up and walked to the front, keeping my folder at my side. Thank you for letting me address the board. I want to start by being very clear about what happened this morning. Brenda called me and asked me to plow her driveway. I explained that individual driveways are not included in the HOA contract, which covers community roads, the clubhouse, and main sidewalks. This has been the case since we signed the agreement 3 years ago. I opened my folder and pulled out the contract. Here is the original agreement, signed by the board. Section 3, Paragraph B specifically lists what areas we cover. Driveways are not mentioned because they are not included. We offer driveway service as an add-on for $50 per visit or $200 for the season. These are standard rates, and we have about 40 residential clients who pay for this service throughout Rochester. One of the other board members, a man in his 60s, spoke up. So you refused to help Brenda even though you had trucks in the neighborhood? I did not refuse to help. I offered the same service at the same rate we charge everyone else. What I refused to do was provide free service just because Brenda is the HOA president. That would be unfair to every other resident who pays for driveway clearing. Brenda cut in. This is exactly what I am talking about. A good vendor would recognize that certain situations require flexibility. We pay you $30,000 a year. Clearing one driveway should not be this difficult. The $30,000 is for the services outlined in the contract, I said, keeping my voice calm. We have provided those services without fail. In fact, we have exceeded the contract terms multiple times. I pulled out the service logs. During the blizzard in January last year, we came out 3 times in one day, even though the contract only requires us to clear roads when snow accumulation reaches 4 inches. We cleared the walking path to the mailbox stations, even though that is not in the contract. We have salted the clubhouse steps during ice events at no extra charge. We have gone above and beyond repeatedly, and we have never asked for additional payment." Patricia was nodding. A few of the residents in the audience were whispering to each other. But when I am asked to provide a service that is clearly outside the contract terms, I am supposed to explain why that is a reasonable business practice. If I start giving free services to board members, where does it stop? Do I plow all your driveways for free? Do I start mowing your personal lawns in the summer? Another board member, a woman in her 40s with dark hair, spoke up. "Mr. Everett makes a valid point. We cannot expect vendors to give us free services just because we have a contract with them." Brenda's face flushed. "This is not about free services. This is about customer service and going the extra mile. If Mr. Everett cannot understand that, then maybe we need a vendor who will." I had reached my limit. "Brenda, let me be very direct. This is not about customer service. This is about you expecting special treatment because you are the HOA president. I treat all my clients with respect and professionalism, but I do not give free work to anyone. If that is a problem for you, then maybe we should discuss ending this contract." The room went silent. Brenda stared at me with an expression that could have frozen water. "Excuse me. You heard me. I have built my business on integrity and fair dealing. I do not let clients bully me into giving away services. If the board wants to terminate the contract over this, I will be disappointed, but I will understand. However, I am not going to compromise my principles just to keep one client happy." Brenda stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "How dare you speak to me that way? I have been nothing but professional with you. You threatened my contract because I would not give you free service. That is not professional. That is manipulation." The dark-haired board member raised her hand. "I think we need to take a step back here. Mr. Everett, can you give us a few minutes to discuss this privately?" I nodded and walked back outside to the lobby. My heart was pounding, and I could feel adrenaline coursing through my system. I had just told off my third largest client in front of their entire board. Rita would either congratulate me or kill me, possibly both. 20 minutes later, Patricia came out to get me. "We would like you to come back in." The room felt different when I walked back in. Brenda was still sitting at the center of the table, but her expression had shifted from angry to calculating. The dark-haired woman spoke first. "Mr. Everett, I am Laura Reynolds, the board treasurer. After reviewing the contract and discussing this situation, the majority of the board agrees that you have fulfilled your obligations. However, Brenda has raised concerns about whether this working relationship can continue given the confrontational nature of today's interaction." I nodded. "I understand. For what it is worth, I did not intend to be confrontational. I was defending my business practices." "We appreciate that," Laura said. "However, Brenda is still advocating for terminating the contract. She believes that we can find a vendor who will be more accommodating to the board's needs." Brenda smiled slightly, sensing victory. Laura continued. "The board has voted 3-2 to retain Thornton Equipment Services for the remainder of the winter season as per the contract terms. However, we will be soliciting new bids for next year." It was a compromise that pleased no one. Brenda looked furious. I felt like I had won a battle but might still lose the war. "I appreciate the board's confidence," I said. "We will continue to provide excellent service as outlined in the contract." As I walked out to my truck, I knew this was not over. Brenda had the look of someone who did not accept defeat gracefully. I started my truck and sat there for a moment, watching the snow fall in the streetlights. My phone buzzed. Text message from Rita. "How did it go?" I typed back. "Still have the contract for now. We'll explain tomorrow." The next morning, I arrived at the office to find Rita waiting with coffee and a knowing look. I filled her in on everything that had happened at the meeting. "So Brenda is going to spend the next 4 months making your life miserable and then push the board to drop you in the spring," Rita summarized. "That is my guess." "What are you going to do?" I did not have a good answer. We could ride it out, do perfect work, and hope that the rest of the board saw reason when it came time to renew. Or I could start looking for contracts to replace Meadowbrook Estates before they had a chance to fire us. Neither option felt great. The snow continued through the week. We kept Meadowbrook Estates clear according to the contract terms. Every time we plowed, I made sure our crews documented everything with photos and time stamps. If Brenda was looking for excuses to complain, I was not going to give her any ammunition. On Thursday morning, Rita buzzed my office. "Trevor, you have a call on line 2. It is Brenda Morrison and she sounds upset." I picked up. "This is Trevor. Mr. Everett, I am calling to inform you that your crew damaged my mailbox last night while plowing." I pulled up the route logs. "We plowed Meadowbrook Estates at 3 in the morning during the overnight snowfall. Can you describe the damage? The mailbox post is bent, and the box itself is hanging at an angle. Clearly, one of your plow drivers was careless. I will send someone out to look at it this morning." "Can I have your address?" She gave me the address, and I sent my most experienced crew leader, Marcus, to inspect the damage. He called me an hour later. "Trevor, I am at Brenda Morrison's house. The mailbox is definitely bent, but this was not caused by a plow. The snow is undisturbed around the post, and there are no scrape marks or plow damage. If we had hit this, there would be clear signs. This looks like someone backed into it with a car. Take photos of everything. Document the snow patterns, the angle of damage, all of it." Marcus sent me a dozen high-resolution photos within minutes. He was right. The damage pattern was consistent with a vehicle backing into the mailbox, not a plow strike. A plow would have pushed snow into the mailbox and likely knocked it over completely. This was a bent post with the mailbox still attached, and the surrounding snow was smooth and undisturbed. I called Brenda back. "I have had my crew leader inspect the mailbox. Based on the damage pattern and physical evidence, this was not caused by our plow. It looks like a vehicle backed into it." "That is ridiculous. I would have noticed if someone hit my mailbox." "Did you park in your driveway last night?" There was a pause. "I may have. What does that have to do with anything?" "It is possible you backed into the mailbox when you were leaving or returning home. The damage pattern is consistent with that type of impact." "I most certainly did not hit my own mailbox." Her voice was ice. "This is exactly the kind of response I expected from you. Refuse responsibility and blame the customer." "I am not refusing responsibility for something we did not do. I have photographic evidence that shows this was not plow damage. If you would like, I can email you the photos." "I do not need your photos. I need you to replace my mailbox." "Brenda, we did not damage your mailbox, so we are not going to pay to replace it. If you believe we are liable, you can file a claim with your homeowner's insurance, and they can investigate. But based on the evidence, they will reach the same conclusion we did." She hung up on me for the second time that week. 2 hours later, I received an email from the entire Meadowbrook Estates HOA board with Brenda copied. The email claimed that Thornton Equipment Services had damaged HOA President Brenda Morrison's mailbox and refused to take responsibility, demonstrating a clear pattern of poor customer service and lack of accountability. Brenda was requesting an emergency board meeting to discuss immediate contract termination. I replied to the entire board with a professional email attaching Marcus's photos and a detailed explanation, of why the damage was not caused by our equipment. I also included our insurance company's contact information and invited the board to have an independent adjuster review the evidence. Patricia Coleman replied directly to me, "Trevor, this is getting out of hand. Brenda is determined to get rid of your company, and she is not going to let facts get in the way. You might want to consider your options." I appreciated the warning, but I was not going to just roll over. That evening, I called my business attorney, David Zimmerman. David had helped me set up the LLC when I started the company, and he had reviewed all my major contracts. "David, I need your opinion on a contract dispute." I filled him in on the entire situation with Brenda and the HOA board. He listened without interrupting, then asked to see the contract and all the documentation I had gathered. I emailed everything to him. "Give me until tomorrow to review this," he said. "But from what you have told me, you are on solid legal ground. The question is whether you want to fight this battle or just move on." That was the question I had been asking myself all week. Fighting meant stress, potential legal fees, and the certainty that even if I won, the relationship with Meadowbrook Estates was poisoned beyond repair. Walking away meant losing significant revenue, but also freeing myself from dealing with Brenda's manipulation. I slept on it and woke up Friday morning with clarity. I was not going to let Brenda Morrison push me around. If she wanted to terminate the contract over manufactured issues, I would make sure the board and the residents understood exactly what was happening and why. David called me at 9. "I have reviewed everything. Your contract has a 30-day termination clause that allows either party to end the agreement with written notice. The HOA can fire you, but they have to pay for services rendered through the 30-day period. More importantly, your contract includes an indemnification clause that protects you from liability for damages not caused by your negligence. That mailbox situation is clearly covered. What if Brenda pushes the board to terminate without cause? They can do that. It is their right under the contract, but you should make sure they understand they will still need to pay the full 30 days, and they will need to find a replacement vendor immediately. This is peak snow season. Finding someone who can take over a property that size on short notice will not be easy. An idea started forming. "David, what if I terminate the contract instead?" "You can do that too, same 30-day notice requirement. But what if I invoke the emergency clause?" David was quiet for a moment. "You are talking about Section 8. That allows either party to terminate immediately if there is a material breach, or if continuing the relationship would create an untenable working environment. Brenda has been harassing me all week, making false accusations about damaged property, and attempting to extort free services by threatening the contract. I would argue that creates an untenable working environment. That is a creative interpretation, but it might hold up. You would need to document everything carefully. And Trevor, if you do this, you need to be prepared for the fallout. They could sue you for breach of contract. But you think I would win that lawsuit? Based on what you have told me and the documentation you have provided, yes. Brenda has created a hostile working environment through her actions. You have evidence of her demanding free services, making false damage claims, and attempting to manipulate the board. A judge would likely find that you had reasonable cause to terminate. Draft the termination letter. I want it to be airtight. I spent the rest of Friday documenting every interaction with Brenda, the phone calls, the emails, the board meeting, the mailbox incident. I had Marcus write up a formal statement about the mailbox inspection. I pulled all our service records showing we had met every contract obligation. By 5 o'clock, I had a file 2 inches thick. David sent me the termination letter at 6. It was 3 pages of legal language that boiled down to: Thornton Equipment Services is terminating our contract with Meadowbrook Estates, HOA, effective immediately, due to material breach of the working relationship by HOA President Brenda Morrison. We are invoking the emergency termination clause in Section 8. Final invoice attached for services rendered through today. Equipment will be removed from the property within 24 hours. The final invoice was for the pro-rated amount through Friday. About $7,000 that they owed me for the season so far. I read the letter 3 times, then signed it and had Rita witness it. We sent it by email and certified mail to the entire HOA board at 7 on Friday evening. My phone started ringing at 7:15. It was Patricia Coleman. "Trevor, did you just terminate our snow removal contract?" I did. The letter explains why. "This is going to create a massive problem. We have snow forecasted for tomorrow night. How are we supposed to find a replacement by then?" "That is not my problem anymore, Patricia. I am sorry, but Brenda has made it impossible for me to continue working with your HOA. The harassment and false accusations have created a situation where I cannot effectively do my job. I am within my rights to terminate under the emergency clause. Brenda is going to lose her mind, probably. But I am done being her punching bag." Patricia sighed. "I understand. For what it is worth, I think Brenda brought this on herself, but the residents are going to suffer because of it." That gave me a twinge of guilt. The homeowners in Meadowbrook Estates had not done anything wrong. They were just caught in the middle of a conflict between me and their HOA president. "Patricia, here is what I will do. If any individual residents want to hire us for their driveways or personal property, we will honor that. But I am not doing any more work for the HOA. I appreciate that. I will let people know." Saturday morning arrived with clear skies but the promise of snow by evening. My phone was surprisingly quiet. I expected Brenda to call, screaming about the contract termination, but there was nothing. Then Rita called me at noon. "Trevor, you need to see this." She sent me a link to the Meadowbrook Estates Facebook page. Brenda had posted a long message to the community. "Dear Meadowbrook Estates residents, it is with deep regret that I must inform you that our snow removal contractor, Thornton Equipment Services, has abandoned their contract with us effective immediately. Despite our efforts to work with them on minor service issues, they chose to terminate our agreement without proper notice, leaving our community vulnerable during peak winter weather. The board is working diligently to find a replacement, but I want you to know that this disruption is entirely due to Trevor Everett's unprofessional behavior and refusal to honor his commitments. If you experience any snow-related problems in the coming days, please direct your complaints to Thornton Equipment Services at the phone number below. We will keep you updated on the situation." She had posted my business phone number for the entire community to see. I felt anger rise in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was defamation, plain and simple. Brenda was lying about what happened and encouraging people to harass my business. I called David immediately. "She is trying to destroy my reputation. Save that post, screenshot it. This is actionable." I took multiple screenshots and archived the page. Then I drafted my own response and posted it as a comment on Brenda's message. "To the residents of Meadowbrook Estates, my name is Trevor Everett, owner of Thornton Equipment Services. I want to address the misinformation in this post. We did not abandon your contract. We terminated it legally under the emergency clause due to ongoing harassment and false accusations by HOA President Brenda Morrison. This decision was not made lightly. For 3 years, We have provided excellent service to your community, often going beyond our contract obligations. However, when I refuse to provide free personal services to Miss Morrison and decline to accept responsibility for property damage we did not cause, she began a campaign to damage my business. I have extensive documentation of these interactions. The termination letter was sent to the entire HOA board with proper legal notice. I am sorry that you are caught in this situation, but I could not continue working under these circumstances. If you need personal snow removal services, please feel free to contact us. We will be happy to help individual homeowners. I posted the comment and waited. Within minutes, residents started chiming in. Some supported Brenda. Others asked questions. A few people who I had worked with previously on individual projects vouched for my work quality. Then Brenda deleted my comment and blocked me from the page. David called me 20 minutes later. "Did you see what she just did? She deleted my comment and blocked me. That helps our case. She is trying to control the narrative and prevent you from defending yourself. Keep documenting everything." The snow started falling at 6 that evening. It was going to be a significant storm, maybe 8 to 10 inches by morning. I kept my crews on their regular routes, servicing all our other clients. Meadowbrook Estates was on their own. Sunday morning, my phone started ringing off the hook. Individual residents from Meadowbrook Estates were calling, asking if I could plow their driveways. The HOA roads were buried under 10 inches of snow, and no one could get out of the neighborhood. Apparently, Brenda had not managed to find a replacement contractor. I felt bad for the residents, but I had made my position clear. I was not working for the HOA anymore. If individual homeowners wanted to hire me for their personal property, that was different. By noon, I had 12 Meadowbrook Estates residents signed up for individual driveway service at my standard rates. My crews worked through the afternoon, clearing driveways and helping people dig out their cars. The HOA roads remained buried. Monday morning brought a flood of emails. The HOA board had received dozens of complaints from residents who could not get to work because the roads were impassable. Someone had called the city, but the city only maintained public roads, not private HOA streets. Brenda had reached out to 3 other snow removal companies, but all of them were either fully booked or quoted rates significantly higher than what I had been charging. Patricia Coleman sent me a personal email. "Trevor, I know you have every right to be angry, but is there any way we can work this out? People are trapped in their homes. The board is willing to pay a premium for emergency service." I called her instead of emailing back. "Patricia, I am sympathetic to the residents, but I am not going to put my crews in a position where Brenda can make their lives miserable. The moment we show up, she will find something to complain about, and we will be right back where we started. What if I personally guarantee that Brenda will not interfere? You cannot make that guarantee. She is the HOA president. Then what if Brenda is removed as president? That caught my attention. Is that something the board is considering? After this weekend, 3 board members are seriously questioning her leadership. Laura and I have been talking to Michael, the other board member who voted to keep you. If we can get one more vote, we would have a majority to remove Brenda from the presidency. Who is the 5th member? Donald Harper. He is usually on Brenda's side, but he is getting a lot of heat from residents right now. His own driveway has not been cleared and his wife is furious. Patricia, even if you remove Brenda as president, she would still be on the board. She would still be there making trouble. We can remove her from the board entirely with a 2/3 vote of the full HOA membership. That would require a special meeting and a vote of homeowners. I thought about it. Here is what I will do. If the board officially removes Brenda Morrison as president and commits to a special election to remove her from the board, I will provide emergency snow removal service at cost until you find a permanent replacement. No markup, just covering my expenses. Once Brenda is off the board, we can discuss a new contract for the rest of the season. Let me talk to the other board members. I will call you back in 2 hours. She called back in 90 minutes. We have the votes. Emergency board meeting tonight at 7. Can you be there? I will be there. The clubhouse was packed that evening. Every seat was filled and people were standing along the walls. The residents were angry and they wanted answers. Brenda sat at the board table looking defiant, but I could see tension in her shoulders. Laura Reynolds called the meeting to order. Thank you all for coming on short notice. We are here to address the snow removal crisis and determine the best path forward for our community. Residents immediately started shouting questions. How long until the roads were cleared? Why did the contractor leave? Who was responsible for this mess? Laura banged the gavel. Please, one at a time. We will explain everything, but we need order. Patricia stood up. The board has been reviewing the situation with our previous contractor, Thornton Equipment Services. After careful examination of the facts, we have determined that the contract termination was the result of actions taken by our board president, Brenda Morrison, that created an untenable working relationship. Brenda's face turned red. That is not true. Trevor Everett is the one who walked away from his obligations. Actually, Brenda, it is true. Laura pulled out a stack of papers. We have reviewed all the documentation, including your phone calls demanding free services, your false accusations about property damage, and your public post that misrepresented the situation and endangered Mr. Everett's business reputation. Your behavior was unprofessional and harmful to this community. A murmur ran through the crowd. Residents were whispering to each other. Michael Bradford, the older board member, spoke up. I move that we remove Brenda Morrison as HOA president, effective immediately, due to conduct unbecoming of the position and actions that have materially harmed the community. I second the motion, Patricia said quickly. This is ridiculous, Brenda sputtered. I have served this community for 5 years. I have worked tirelessly to maintain our standards and property values. And you are going to throw me out because one contractor could not handle a simple request. Laura looked at her coldly. You extorted free services, filed false damage claims, and then publicly defamed a business owner when he stood up to you. That is not leadership. That is abuse of power. All in favor of removing Brenda Morrison as HOA president. 4 hands went up. Laura, Patricia, Michael, and Donald Harper. Brenda sat in stunned silence. You cannot do this. We just did, Laura said. As the treasurer, I will assume the role of interim president until we can hold proper elections. Patricia will serve as interim vice president. One of the residents in the audience stood up. What about getting her off the board completely? I move for a special election. Under HOA bylaws, any homeowner could petition for a special election if they gathered signatures from 20% of the residents. The room erupted in discussion. People were pulling out their phones, texting neighbors. Someone started passing around a petition right there in the meeting. Brenda stood up, grabbing her purse. This is a witch hunt. I will not sit here and be humiliated. Sit down, Brenda, Laura said firmly. We are not done. I am done with all of you. Brenda stormed out of the meeting room, her heels clicking on the tile floor. After she left, the room felt lighter somehow. Laura looked at me. Mr. Everett, are you willing to resume snow removal services under the terms we discussed? I stood up. I am willing to provide emergency service at cost until you find a permanent solution. That means you pay for fuel, labor, and equipment at our base rates with no markup. Once the special election is complete, and if Brenda is removed from the board, we can discuss a new contract for the remainder of the season. That is more than fair, Laura said. Can you start tomorrow? My crews will be there at 6 in the morning. The residents actually applauded. I felt awkward standing there being clapped at, but it also felt good to be appreciated. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind. My crews cleared Meadowbrook Estates every morning, keeping the roads safe and passable. I billed the HOA at cost as promised, which came out to about 40% less than our normal contracted rate. Laura ran the board with efficiency and common sense, nothing like Brenda's micromanaging style. The special election happened on a Saturday in early March. 234 residents showed up to vote on whether to remove Brenda Morrison from the HOA board. The vote was not even close. 197 in favor of removal, 37 against. Brenda did not attend the vote. I heard through Patricia that she was considering moving out of Meadowbrook Estates entirely. Her reputation in the community was destroyed, and every time she left her house, neighbors would glare at her. With Brenda gone, the board approached me about resuming our regular contract. We negotiated new terms that were actually more favorable than the previous agreement. The board appreciated what I had done by providing emergency service at cost, and they wanted to ensure I felt valued as a vendor. But the story did not end there. About a week after Brenda was voted off the board, I received a certified letter at my office. It was from Brenda's attorney, notifying me that she was filing a lawsuit against me for defamation, breach of contract, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She was seeking $250,000 in damages. I immediately forwarded the letter to David Zimmerman. He called me an hour later, and I could hear the irritation in his voice. This is a garbage lawsuit. She has no case. But you are going to have to defend it, which means legal fees and time. Can we countersue? Absolutely. We have a solid case for abuse of process, and we can include her actual defamatory statements from the Facebook post. Plus, we can argue that she filed this suit in retaliation for you exercising your legal rights to terminate the contract. The lawsuit dragged on for months. Brenda's attorney was clearly just going through the motions, but the process was exhausting. Depositions, document production, endless legal motions. David kept telling me we would win, but it did not make the experience any less stressful. Finally, in July, we went to court for summary judgment. David argued that Brenda's claims had no merit and should be dismissed without even going to trial. The judge agreed. He threw out all of Brenda's claims and ordered her to pay my legal fees, which had ballooned to $40,000. But David was not done. He filed our countersuit immediately, seeking damages for defamation, abuse of process, and malicious prosecution. We had all the evidence, the Facebook posts, the false damage claims, the threatening phone calls, everything. Brenda's attorney tried to settle. He called David and offered to make the whole thing go away if we dropped the countersuit. David called me for instructions. What do you want to do, Trevor? We can settle and be done with this, or we can push forward and likely win a judgment, but that means more time in court. I thought about all the hours I had spent on this case, all the stress and aggravation. I thought about the other small business owners out there who might face similar situations with bullies like Brenda. We go forward. I want a judgment on record showing what she did was wrong. Maybe it will make the next HOA Karen think twice before pulling this kind of stunt. The trial happened in October. It lasted 3 days. David presented all our evidence methodically. The contracts showing individual driveways were not included, the photos of the undamaged mailbox post, the Facebook posts with my business number encouraging harassment, the timeline of Brenda's escalating behavior. Brenda took the stand in her own defense. It did not go well. Under cross-examination, she got defensive and argumentative. She actually told the judge that as HOA president, she should have received special consideration, and that I should have been grateful for the opportunity to serve the community. The judge was not impressed. Miss Morrison, being president of a homeowners association does not entitle you to free services from contractors. Mr. Everett had every right to enforce the terms of his contract and to protect his business from false accusations. When the judge issued his ruling, he did not hold back. He found in my favor on all counts and awarded me $80,000 in damages, $40,000 for legal fees, $30,000 for defamation and harm to my business reputation, and $10,000 for emotional distress. More importantly, the judge included language in his order specifically calling out Brenda's abuse of her position as HOA president and her attempts to manipulate the legal system to retaliate against someone who had stood up to her. It was a public rebuke that would follow her forever. Brenda appealed the judgment, but her appeal was denied 6 months later. By that point, she had moved out of Meadowbrook Estates entirely. I heard she relocated to Arizona, trying to start fresh somewhere her reputation had not preceded her. As for me, I used some of the settlement money to expand my business. I bought 2 new trucks and hired 3 more employees. Word spread in the Rochester business community about what had happened with the HOA, and I actually gained clients because of it. People respected that I had stood my ground and not let a bully push me around. The Meadowbrook Estates contract continued without incident. Laura served out the rest of the term as president, and then handed over leadership to a retired accountant named Frank, who ran the board with quiet competence. No one ever asked me for free services again. I also started including specific anti-harassment language in all my contracts. If a client makes false accusations or attempts to extort free services, I can terminate immediately without penalty. David helped me draft the language, and it has given me peace of mind. Rita retired at the end of that year. At her retirement party, she pulled me aside and said something I will never forget. "You know, when you first told me you were going to stand up to that HOA president, I was worried you were making a mistake. But you showed me that sometimes doing the right thing is more important than keeping a client. I am proud of you. Looking back on the whole experience, I do not regret my decision to terminate that contract. Yes, it led to months of legal battles and stress. Yes, it cost me time and energy that I could have spent growing my business. But it also taught me that I do not have to tolerate abuse just because someone writes me a check. I learned that bullies like Brenda rely on people being too afraid to stand up to them. They expect you to back down when they threaten your livelihood. But when you call their bluff and refuse to be intimidated, they usually do not know what to do. The snow season came around again, and Thornton Equipment Services was busier than ever. We had added 2 more HOA contracts, expanded our commercial client base, and my reputation for quality work and integrity had never been stronger. On a cold morning in December, almost exactly 2 years after that first phone call from Brenda demanding I plow her driveway for free, I was sitting in my office reviewing contracts for the upcoming year. Rita's replacement, a sharp young woman named Jennifer, buzzed me on the intercom. "Trevor, I have someone on line 3 asking about snow removal services for an HOA. Which community?" She said she is the president of Willowbrook Manor on the east side. I had heard of Willowbrook Manor. It was a smaller community than Meadowbrook Estates, maybe 60 homes. Put her through. Mr. Everett, my name is Sharon Fuller. I am the HOA president at Willowbrook Manor, and we are looking for a new snow removal contractor. Your company came highly recommended. I appreciate that, Sharon. What happened with your current contractor? They did good work, but they retired and sold their business to a larger company. The new company wants to raise our rates by 40%, and frankly, we cannot afford it. I have been calling around for quotes. We talked for 20 minutes about their needs, the size of the property, and the scope of work. It sounded like a straightforward job, similar to several other HOAs I serviced. Then I asked the question that had become standard for me. Sharon, before we go any further, I need to ask you something. How does your board handle vendor relationships? Have you had any issues with board members expecting special treatment or services beyond the contract terms? There was a pause. That is an interesting question. Why do you ask? I gave her the abbreviated version of what happened with Brenda Morrison and Meadowbrook Estates. I figured it was better to be upfront about my boundaries from the beginning. Sharon laughed. Mr. Everett, I love your directness. Let me be equally direct with you. Our board operates on the principle that we are stewards of the community's money and resources. We expect excellent service from our vendors, and in return, we treat them with respect and pay our bills on time. If any board member tried to demand free services, I would shut that down immediately. Does that answer your question? It does. When can we meet to discuss a contract? Willowbrook Manor became one of my best clients. Sharon ran that HOA the way it should be run, professionally, efficiently, and with respect for everyone involved. It reminded me that not all HOAs were like Meadowbrook Estates under Brenda's leadership. Over time, the drama with Brenda faded into just another story in the history of my business. But I never forgot the lessons I learned. Stand up for yourself. Do not let anyone bully you into compromising your principles. Document everything, and know when to walk away from a toxic situation, even if it costs you in the short term. The settlement money from Brenda eventually came through after her appeal was denied. $80,000 minus the legal fees I had already paid. I took half of it and split it as bonuses among my crew members who had stuck with me through that difficult period. They had dealt with angry calls from Meadowbrook Estates residents, worked extra hours to help individual homeowners, and never complained about the chaos. They deserved to share in the vindication. I used the other half to start a small emergency fund for the business. Money set aside specifically for legal defense if I ever needed to stand up to another abusive client. I hoped I would never need it, but having it there gave me confidence to run my business according to my values rather than being held hostage by fear. 3 years after the initial incident, I got a call from Patricia Coleman. She had rotated off the Meadowbrook Estates board but still lived in the community. Trevor, I wanted to let you know something. Brenda Morrison is apparently coming back to Rochester for a family event. She called Laura asking if she could attend the HOA Christmas party. Laura politely declined. I laughed. I appreciate you giving me a heads up, but Brenda and I are ancient history at this point. I know, but I also wanted to thank you. What you did, standing up to her, it changed things in our community. People realized that we had been letting her get away with bullying behavior for years, not just with vendors but with neighbors too. After she left, the whole atmosphere in Meadowbrook Estates improved. People are friendlier. The board meetings are actually productive instead of being all about Brenda's pet projects. You did us a favor by refusing to put up with her behavior. I appreciate you saying that, Patricia. It means a lot. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the whole experience had taught me something fundamental about business and life. You teach people how to treat you. If you accept disrespect, manipulation, and bullying, that is what you will continue to receive. But if you establish clear boundaries and enforce them consistently, people learn to treat you accordingly. The snow continued to fall in Rochester, Minnesota, and Thornton Equipment Services continued to keep the roads clear. We grew steadily year after year, building a reputation not just for quality work but for integrity. Other contractors would sometimes ask me for advice, and I always told them the same thing: never compromise your principles for a paycheck. The clients who respect your boundaries are the ones worth keeping. I eventually heard through the grapevine that Brenda had tried to join an HOA board in her new community in Arizona. Apparently, someone had Googled her name, found the court records from our case, and raised concerns about her history. She was not elected to the board. Karma had its own way of working things out. As for the Meadowbrook Estates contract, it remained one of my steadiest sources of revenue. Frank, the retired accountant who took over as president after Laura, ran the board with quiet efficiency for several years before handing over to another resident. The community learned its lesson about selecting leadership, and they never again chose someone who treated the HOA presidency as a personal fiefdom. My business continued to thrive, and I added services beyond snow removal, landscaping, property maintenance, even some light construction work. The team I built was loyal and professional, and we took pride in every job we did. But I never forgot where it all could have gone wrong. One phone call from an entitled HOA president demanding free services. One decision point where I could have caved just to keep the peace. Instead, I stood my ground, fought for what was right, and came out stronger on the other side. The legal battle was stressful, the uncertainty was difficult, and there were moments when I questioned whether it was all worth it. But in the end, I proved to myself and everyone watching that you do not have to tolerate abuse just because someone has power over your paycheck. That lesson served me well in countless situations over the following years. Whenever I faced a difficult client or an unreasonable demand, I remembered Brenda Morrison and her belief that her title entitled her to special treatment. And I remembered the satisfaction of winning that court judgment, of having a judge publicly validate that I had done the right thing. The snow removal business is not glamorous. It is cold, early mornings and long hours. It is equipment breakdowns and difficult weather conditions. But it is honest work, and I built my company on honest principles. No shortcuts, no compromises. No giving away free services just to appease someone who thinks they are entitled to more than they paid for. Years later, when I finally sold Thornton Equipment Services and retired, the business was worth 10 times what it had been worth that day when Brenda Morrison first demanded I plow her driveway for free. Part of that growth was good business decisions and hard work. But part of it was reputation. The intangible value that comes from being known as someone who does quality work and stands behind their principles. I often wondered if Brenda ever reflected on how that situation played out. Did she understand that her behavior had consequences? Did she regret the choices she made? I would never know, and truthfully, it did not matter. She taught me an important lesson, even if that was not her intention. She taught me that sometimes the most expensive thing you can give away is not money or services, but your self-respect. And that, I learned, is something that no HOA president, no matter how entitled or demanding, could ever take from me. Not without my permission. And I was never going to give that permission again. The story of the HOA Karen who demanded my plow for free became something of a legend in Rochester business circles. Other contractors would reference it when dealing with difficult clients. "Remember what Trevor did with Meadowbrook Estates," they would say. "He stood his ground and came out ahead." I always felt a little embarrassed by the attention, but I also recognized that the story resonated because it touched on something universal. Everyone has dealt with a bully at some point. Everyone has been in a situation where they had to choose between standing up for themselves or taking the path of least resistance. My story showed that standing up, while difficult and sometimes costly in the short term, was ultimately the right choice. Looking back now, years removed from the stress and drama, I can see the whole situation with clarity. Brenda Morrison was not a monster. She was someone who had been given a small amount of power and let it go to her head. She genuinely believed that her position entitled her to special treatment, and she had probably gotten away with that behavior for so long that she expected it would always work. What she did not expect was someone like me, someone who had built a business on clear principles and was willing to defend those principles even at significant cost. That collision between her expectations and my boundaries created a conflict that ultimately cost her much more than it cost me. The final irony is that if Brenda had simply accepted my initial explanation about the contract terms and paid the $50 for driveway service, none of this would have happened. She would still be HOA president. She would still be living in Meadowbrook Estates. She would not have an $80,000 judgment against her and a court record documenting her abuse of power. All of that happened because she could not accept that her title did not entitle her to free services. Pride and entitlement led her down a path that destroyed her reputation and cost her a significant amount of money. It was a cautionary tale about the dangers of letting power, even small power, corrupt your sense of fairness and proportion. As for me, I came out of the experience stronger, wiser, and more confident. I learned that I could trust my instincts about right and wrong. I learned that standing up to bullies, while scary, usually works out in the end. And I learned that the clients worth keeping are the ones who respect boundaries and treat vendors as partners rather than servants. Those lessons served me well throughout the rest of my career and beyond. Every time I faced a difficult decision, I thought back to that moment when I could have just plowed Brenda's driveway for free and avoided all the drama. And every time, I was glad I made the choice I did. Because the drama was temporary, but the principles I defended were permanent. And that made all the difference.